Has it ever occurred to you that when you do take a vacation, it isn't very restful? Has it also occurred to you that when you embark on a huge task and a huge project and you rush towards it and you somehow have to sustain a huge amount of pressure and you eventually burn out, the burning out actually isn't when you're actually working, it's actually after you stop working and you take a break. And then what happens is usually you fall sick that sort of like causes a spiral of events resulting in you becoming far worse off than if you were just chronically working hard. I was puzzled by this and I started to do a little bit of research. I spoke to a few people, started researching on the internet, and something seemed to crop up. And this was not quite normal. As far as I'm concerned, the people whom I've spoken to who have burnt out usually take a bit of a rest period after an extremely difficult period. So it dawned on me that perhaps that's the reason. And I didn't understand this, so I started to dig up on a lot of other literature related to health, nutrition, and so on. And what seems to strike me is that for people who are very adaptive, in other words, they go in and out of stress on a regular basis, they don't seem to have these problems. In fact, some of them chase after the high pressure, high stress environment, but they know how to take breaks in between. And these breaks are not necessarily very long, relaxing walks on the beach for weeks on end. They tend to be really short periods of rest, perhaps one evening completely doing nothing. They're cycling out to a shop and then they sit there and they drink some coffee, whatever it might be. And what I find is that it seems like maybe we have gotten the entire adaptation wrong for burnout. One of the things that's very apparent for people who are burnt out is because they take a look at that situation of pressure as a very difficult time compared with a situation which would enable them growth. And the more I think about it, the more it makes sense, because if you're constantly stuck in your mind and saying that, oh, this is really difficult, this is really tough, I need a break, it's a statement of avoidance. You're trying to drag yourself out of it and your body starts to recalibrate to that. I'm not sure whether I have any active research that highlights this, but it seems to make absolute perfect sense to me. So whenever you had a highly pressuring situation and you suddenly took a break immediately after that and you tried to go on vacation, did that actually drain you out? Type it in comments down below. So what it means is that sometimes we don't have to pace ourselves by being extreme. In other words, working hard and then suddenly take a vacation. I think that's partly the adaptation that's going on inside the body to let the body feel that there's something wrong and therefore it needs to combat it with some kind of immune response. Instead, how about allowing your body to take a surge of challenge, but in between you plan some moments of rest and relaxation in between? Have you been able to do that and been able to take your mind off things? Unfortunately, I know a lot of people who aren't able to do that. So whenever they try to take a break, their mind is still stuck in that area. I'm guilty of this myself. I remember having training programs that I have to conduct, and whenever I am trying to rest and say, okay, you know what, I have to rest very well the night before, and then something spirals inside my head, I get up and in the middle of the night and I just feel completely not rested. So what it means is that perhaps there is a modulation system that enables us to reduce the emphasis on a bad feeling in anticipation of a stressful situation. We need to get ourselves into a baseline state that is probably supported by meditation and mindfulness. I have a video on guided imagery and the research antecedents to that, as well as another one on self-talk. So you can go ahead and take a look at those two. Those have fascinating research, and I think it's really powerful to come to a discovery about what we can do in order to galvanize and manage our own internal pain and our own internal performance. I remember moments when I had to take a break and I fell sick, but then there were moments where I kept a steady pace of pressure, not too high, not too low. I was in a sense pacing myself relatively well. Those moments I seem to do very well, and I seem to be able to move faster beyond whatever it is that I need to do. So it follows that it's like a physical training routine. You have an amp up period to develop yourself. You have a period where you are resting, and then there's a period where you recover from the muscular aches and pains after your workout. it is a sprint, rest and then recover kind of a process. I'm not sure whether we have those kinds of rhythms within our organization. Sometimes we're just not having those rhythms because we misunderstood what it meant to be able to ramp things up. So mentally preparing oneself is actually very important. So you go into a situation where you know that, oh, I'm going to have an examination, or oh, I'm going to have a peak period during this season. So you ramp yourself up, you build all the necessary resources required, and then you go in. And this season cannot be something that is years long. In fact, a lot of people who are able to dial down the pain inside their body sometimes end up pursuing this thing with justification that it is passion, and then when they get disappointed, especially emotionally or maybe even purpose-wise, they find, oh my goodness, this is not purposeful at all. Then it begs the question, how do we proceed in order for us to become better, and how do we strive without having to burn out completely? And I think that the answer lies within here and within here and within our gut. You can't see me pointing at my stomach. So one of the challenges of getting energy and being resilient is sometimes a cognitive thing. You're kind of like thinking about how to strive to get to a goal, and you're coming up with great strategic ideas, which is wonderful. The other thing is you have a heart for it, right? You seek, you dive into your purpose, you feel really good about it, you feel very passionate about it, and you drive yourself toward it. And whenever you feel like you're flagging, you push yourself some more. But then there's one piece which is not complete. It's your gut, isn't it? So there's a lot of research that follows that your gut microbiome is the key thing that generates the energy. And of course it means whatever it is that we take in is going to come out in our physiology. So are you taking a whole bunch of sugars, a huge bunch of carbohydrates, and not utilizing them well, and therefore ending up extremely hungry or extremely insulin insensitive? There's this term that a lot of people in research in health and nutrition have actually come to realize over the last decade or so, that when you're insulin resistant, you need more insulin in order to deal with the carbs and the sugars that are being produced by the process of digestion, largely because you've always been eating, you've always been doing this, and it seems to be parallel to the external world. So if you always eat and you develop insulin resistance because you're constantly having to produce and having to work, what might happen if you use that as the parallel to your work, and therefore you're constantly not replenishing yourself, you're constantly not re-energizing yourself and not looking into your gut microbiome, and as a result, the amount of energy that you have to create inside of your body is insufficient to keep you going. And then you fall sick and you feel sick on a day-to-day basis. So my suspicion is that you become resistant to the amount of rest that you need. I know it sounds a little bit ominous. There doesn't seem to be any research that holds this up, but there are some people that I know, they seem to have to rest only this amount of time and then they automatically wake up because there is no peace of mind. Those who have burnt out have high sustained levels of anxiety even though their body doesn't state it. And then they keep pushing themselves again and again and again until a point of time where they completely flat out break, and then their entire business or the entire community just breaks. So what's the way forward? In my opinion, I think it's to firstly take care of our gut, because this is the basis of what we have, right? So get ourselves healthy and eat the right things. For a good reference, I'd highly recommend Dr. Eric Berg on YouTube. So go check him out. He's fantastic. I love his content because he talks about a lot of things nutrition-wise. Specific to the gut microbes and gut microbiome, I highly recommend Zach Bush, also on YouTube. He's a thought leader in many fields. He's a medical doctor. And I do believe that if you dive into his research a little bit, you'll find that a lot of his focus on the gut microbes is not just about the gut. It's also about an entire alignment with the ecosystem around us, and that's fascinating. So if we get ourselves grounded there, then the next step will be to manage the way we feel. And I've got plenty of videos that talk about the emotional mindset, what you do as part of the growth mindset to mitigate stresses and things like that. And if you want more information, I'll be very happy to produce that. But delve through some of my other content that helps you to get a control or at least have a framework of thinking surrounding your emotions. And finally, enrichment of your mind. How do you actually go out and find ideas that are completely distant from what yours are and attempt to resonate with it? So you might not like a particular person on the internet, But if you just go and lean into their ideas, what do you find out? What do you notice? What do you learn? If there's something that seems to be absolutely impossible for you, and you found somebody on the internet who actually can, and it functions as a counterexample to your entire way of thinking, that's probably a way to stretch your mind and stretch the way you can lean into new ideas, better ideas possibly, so that you can find basically where you're wrong and get some feedback, correct it, and then move forward. So in that regard, I think you keep yourself healthy because you get centered. And I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to say that when your head, heart, and gut are aligned, you are centered. And until many people start to discover that they are literally just getting lopsided, they're either getting too heart full or too mind full or too gut full, they end up in serious disease and have to recover from it. So I think that there's a journey for all of us to take, to begin to jot down plans for head, heart, and gut, and to utilize this in a journey moving forward to arrive at a greater sense of synergistic health, as I might call it. So if you found this to be useful or it sparked off some ideas, tell me what those ideas are down in comments down below, and I look forward to your inquiries. I'll do some research in areas which you might be interested in and do additional videos. In the meanwhile, if you like this, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon so that you can be updated on any other content that I create. On top of that, please share. Please let other people know about this content channel so that we'll be able to reach out to more people, elevate them beyond the level of suffering so that they can take actions for abundance.